Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Owner's Box After Dark. I am your host, Mark Farinella, the former assistant sports editor and Patriots beat writer for a newspaper here in southeastern Massachusetts. 41 years duration, now happily retired and podcasting. It's nice to be back here in the studio. We have not been here within the palatial confines of Fulton Pond Studios for a while. And it is, of course, Thursday, July 29th, 2021. And I mentioned where we are. This is episode 51. And I guess I could call it the first episode of the second season of the Owner's Box After Dark. If we want to create numbers of seasons. I don't really have to, but let's see if I can go more seasons than Hugh Hefner got out of Playboy After Dark and Playboy's Penthouse. We'll see if we can do it anyway. Cheers to you all. Good to see you all back here. Welcome back. Very happy to have you here. And, episode 50 was a real throwback to this podcast's origins because I did it down in North Falmouth from the same kitchen table where I recorded the first 8 episodes of this podcast. It was a little bit strange not to have all the equipment, not to have the mixing board, to have the really fancy microphone, although I have a pretty good one. It's one of those Blue Yetis, I believe this one. This one is a really outstanding microphone and makes my voice sound pretty good, don't you think? And, it was put together without all of my video editing software, without all the bells and whistles and the graphics. I had to hold up my iPad in front of the screen to get the opening theme and the closing credits to run. And again, they were the wrong credits, obviously, because they were for episode 49, not episode 50. But, it's nice to have the technological advantages that makes this easy on the eyes and ears. It's good to have them back. It was an underwhelming vacation. I was not overly happy with the 2-week period, and it's not the place where I stay. Please don't get me wrong. I call him my brother from another mother. His name is Alex Salaki. We grew up together. He built a house in North Falmouth, and I just spent my money on mixing boards and expensive microphones and stuff like that. And now two light discs right above my head, although one of them points the other way because at some point I'm going to use the studio with somebody else in it again. It's been a while, pandemic notwithstanding. But, I've been going to the same place. Well, actually, I've been going to the same beach since the late 1960s and early 1970s. My grandmother had a place in Dennisport, and as a child I went there, but it was a very small house, and it was usually overrun with tons of Italians, so it wasn't much fun, and my mother absolutely hated it. So as a result, when my father's best friend from high school, Dr. Charles Colella, who was a dentist in Mansfield, they went to high school together, and Charlie Colella built a very nice house, at least for the time, in the Bay Shores development in North Falmouth. And so they would invite us down from time to time. And I loved going down. I was close to Charles and Mary's children. Graduated with Anna Jean. So she would hate to be called Anna Jean now, but Anna Colella, and now Anna Armstrong. And I loved going down there, but again, my mother just really was not a fan of the Cape. It took a lot longer to get to the Cape in the 70s than it did in the late 60s than it did to get there in the modern day time. And as a result, it just dampened everything, the entire atmosphere. So, but when I got my own license, or when I had a girlfriend here in town and Jackie could drive me wherever we go, we'd actually go down there and visit in North Falmouth. And then, of course, I would go down with Alex and Tom Souza and other friends, and we would, and some of Alex's friends from Assumption College, and we would go to this specific beach in New Silver Beach, which is just a little bit farther over from Old Silver Beach, a little farther north along Route 28A, and a very nice neighborhood relatively. I mean, it isn't as what's the word, kitschy, I guess. Kitsch, Dennisport was all tiny little cottages all grouped together. Either that, or there were tourism hotels and maybe this one or two individual house from time to time. And that's what my grandmother's house was surrounded by all this other crap, so the place was overrun. But I didn't like the Dennisport beaches, but in North Falmouth it was a residential neighborhood, and so we'd go down there, and Alex and I. And Alex, in late I think it was 79, he was able to build a house down there, and it was really great, that he was able to devote the funds, something he inherited, I think, but it was good to do, and it was an investment for the time. And so I started going down there, and I would rent it from him in the summer times as a vacation house. So I've been doing that for a long time. I mean, I've been there for the same 2 weeks of July at least every year since the late 1980s, and I can say without a shadow of doubt that this year's 2 weeks were quite possibly the worst weather weeks in my memory. Rain, muggy, foggy all day, and not a lot of rain though, because the Cape is actually still in a drought condition, whereas the rest of us around here are swimming in it, as I will attest to when I talk about having to mow my lawn when I returned. So, yeah, it wasn't much. And also, because of my ongoing knee issues, and yeah, I know I've beaten this into the dirt for you folks, but they continue, and I was pretty hobbled down there, and my mobility was not what I would like it to be. And as a result, I couldn't walk the distance required for me to get from either the house to the beach directly, or even to drive down to the beach, which is only a half mile away, and find a parking spot, and to be able to walk the 400, maybe 300, 400 yards to get to the spot where I go on the beach. I just couldn't do it this year. And so I never went to the beach. I would say about maybe 10, 11 days I was there, I did not go to the beach. I guess the unintended benefit of all that was a significant reduction in my skin cancer threat this year. And I have had one little spot up here that I had to have surgically removed about 3 years ago. So, yeah, probably a good thing. I didn't get burned or anything like that. I definitely have the golfer's tan underneath here. A lot of white is showing. So, it's but the other thing, too, is that because of the pandemic and what we think is the winding down of it, although I'm not so sure about that, and we'll address that at the end of today's episode, with all the loosened restrictions and the desire of people to get out of their houses and to stop feeling cabin fever, the place was just mobbed. Now, normally, every year when I go down there, that first week after the 4th of July is usually very quiet because not a lot of people, they're all burned out from the 4th, so they don't go down to the Cape that week. And I usually have a very comfortable week. And then the second week gets a little bit crazier because, especially in that area, you have the Barnstable County Fair that clogs up the road between North Falmouth and Mashpee, Massachusetts State Route 151. And although over the years it's not the attraction it used to be, but this year everything was an attraction down there. And get a load of this: the Starbucks in Falmouth, downtown Falmouth, opened only until 4:00 every day because they couldn't find people to work there. Unbelievable. But so with all that traffic and all the people, and also the news reports lately, and I'm a little wary of all that, I started feeling a little nervous about my health down there because, well, you've heard it. The Delta strain of COVID-19 seems to be gaining a foothold everywhere. And I know, funny story, I had gone to a restaurant, first time I'd ever been to this particular restaurant in West Yarmouth. and I think it's called the Yarmouth House. And the draw was excellent prime rib and lobsters. Now, I just had the prime rib. I didn't go for the whole thing. I'm trying to lose weight, folks. Come on. Prime rib, yeah, red meat, blah, 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 blah. But at least, I'm being a better person about it, and my most recent blood numbers were really good. But so I went to this place, and I looked around, and I said, geez, it's kind of a blue hair place. It's, and then I thought about it for a second, and I remembered, I'm a blue hair now. I'm 67 years old, so I fit perfectly. So I sat at the bar, got dinner, had a nice time, drove home that night. Next morning, I hear on Channel 4 News that there's been an outbreak of the Delta variant at a nursing home in West Yarmouth, Massachusetts. I'm like, oh, God. And this is the kind of place that maybe kids would take their parents out to a dinner to, because they'd feel comfortable there. Now, I wasn't wearing a mask that night, and I haven't been tested yet. I've had some sniffles lately, but they're my allergies kicking back in. I know my body pretty well, and you'll hear me snort a couple of times during this episode. But it made me nervous. And in fact, I started wearing masks again. And I wore them in supermarkets or at the Walmart in Falmouth, any place where I felt there'd be a huge crowd of people. And there were a lot of huge crowds of people. But for the most part, I just stayed home. I binge watched Mad Men again. I managed to just relax and enjoy myself and not stress out too much. I did one episode of The Owner's Box after dark. Did not have the reverb with me for that one. Didn't have Hugh Hefner's pipe either. Didn't have it. But I still got one out. But the way the first 8 episodes looked anyway. And the fact that the sun wasn't coming out until the middle of the afternoon anyway, if it wasn't threatening to rain, it was just fogged in. And the fog was a high fog. It wasn't like we were driving around in fog, but it would take forever to burn off before the day started. So it just, all that, and the fact that I had a doctor's appointment in midweek, and I just said, you know what, the heck with it. I just came home. I packed up everything and came home. And nothing against Alex's house. The house is in great shape. I love being there. But it just wasn't into it this year. And besides, like I said, I'm retired now. I don't have a daily job that I had to take vacation from. So as a result, every day's a vacation in my life now. So I think I've talked to Alex. I think I'll probably be able to get a week in September sometime when the crowds have gone and the weather's still nice, and I'll have to come back on a Friday or a Saturday to do high school football for North TV, as I always do. But it would be just great to have some time without the crowds, and let's hope that we're not all totally masked up again. But we'll talk about that again later. Now, all that left me with one incredible task when I got home, and that was mowing my lawn. Last year, it wasn't a problem. Last year, we had a terrible drought around here, and the drought was so bad that my yard just completely crusted up by the middle of almost late June. No rain, no nothing. It was just yellow and crusty and burnt out, and where I drive my car around in the backyard, that was kind of bare, and I was afraid it wasn't even going to come back. The front yard was a mess. Oh, that was terrible. So, I have mowed my own lawn for the better part of the last 3 summers, despite the nagging knee problems, because I figured, it was one way to get exercise. I need to do that. I am not ready to surrender to age. And again, I'm still relatively young, but I just don't want to, I don't want to give up on all of the challenges of physical activity. So, I did have surgery last August 11th, and I've had physical therapy. I had about 7 months of physical therapy, but And the recovery's been like this. It's been kind of on a wavy pattern. It would get better for a while, and then it would get bad, and then it would get better. And lately, for whatever reasons, things really got bad. And it got bad in my ankle, my left ankle as well, because it was getting a fluid buildup in my leg from the surgical repaired area. I had my meniscus taken out. I've told you that before. And so I'm bone on bone in a lot of places there. Then my right knee started hurting, and my right hip, because I was limping all the time. One of the most recent aspects of therapy is they've given me a brace, and it's this massive thing. All right, let's hold it back here. See this? There it is. It's got it's got straps. You fit it over this side up. You fit it over your leg. You strap everything up, and it's supposed to be bent at about a 45-degree angle when you put it on, and it's got to be way up, and hopefully it's in the right place. And I swear to God, I've put it in the right place maybe once or twice at the most when I put it on myself. The day I went to get it over at the Patriot Place, Brigham and Women's Health Center, the technician told me to extend my leg. He put it on for me, and I looked at it, and I tried to remember where everything was, and it was zip, zoom, goodbye. And if I had known how difficult it was going to be to find the right place to put this thing on so that everything's hitting in the right place, I would have gotten tattoos on my leg just to say, bring it here, fasten here. And I have no tattoos. That's almost as extremely frustrated as I was about all this. So I put it on that day, and I managed to, I think it was Thursday when I got back, and after I got out of my doctor's appointment, I came back and I looked at the front yard. Now, the front yard is considerably smaller than the backyard. Pardon me for a sec. Coffee of the night is one of these delicious Starbucks Nitro cold brews. Add a little Splenda and some half and half, and some ice, and it's really good. The front yard is smaller, and it had grown up. I had mowed it, I think about, I want to say maybe 5 to 10 days before, about 10 days before I left. It doesn't grow as high as the backyard. It did come back fairly well from last year's weather, from the drought. But it was just, it's a tough yard to do because it is small, but it's cut out in little areas, and I have to walk around a lot, and I have to turn a lot, and it's kind of on a slight incline, and there's ruts in the grass in a few places. So if you step the wrong way, in fact, that's how I injured the knee back in April of 2020 from previous damage that was there. I stepped the wrong way, and I loosened everything, and that was what sent me along the path to surgery. So I looked at it and I said, I can do it. I can do it if I just get out there and do it. It was long. It really had grown up a lot. And I think I had to empty the bag 6 or 7 times, which I thought which really, for the front yard, I usually only have to empty it once if I do it once a week. But it had grown up a lot. But I got that Honda mower I have is excellent. It really plowed through everything. It's self-propelled, which helps me walk with it, because otherwise there's no way I could push a mower right now, not because I can't get strength when I push off with my legs. So the self-propelled aspect is terrific, and it got through it. Took me quite a while. Took me from, I think, 3 in the afternoon till about 8 before I finished it. And got it done, and was quite sore that same night. And then on Saturday, I decided to tackle the backyard, because we actually had some rain in between then, and so things were growing out of control. Now, the backyard is a lot larger, and it's actually wetter. It draws water through the ground from Fulton Pond in back, and as a result, it's usually a lot plusher. And I got a different kind of grass. For those of you folks who know grass, I have mostly, I think, some sort of Bermuda grass through most of the yard. But there's a patch that my parents planted when they were having trouble with getting it to grow in a certain area. And I think it's called zoysia. You'd have to look that up. Maybe I'll put a graphic down here and see if I spelled it right. But it is incredible in that it grows extremely plush and soft and bouncy in the summertime, and it's lush green, and it feels like you're walking on a trampoline almost. And then in the wintertime, it goes completely dormant and it turns yellow. And I swear to God, if you go on Google Earth, if you knew where my house was, and I'm not going to tell you, you would, well, actually, I hate to say it, you want to take a look. If Google Earth is from a winter period of time, and they update those pictures frequently, but you could see this big yellow patch, and if you keep going up and up and up, I think you can get up to about close to where Jeff Bezos flew his flying penis. about 67, 70 miles. If you go up that high on Google Earth, you could still see this tiny little yellow dot. So yeah, it's gaudy. It's garish in the wintertime, but then if you get a snow cover, it doesn't matter anyway. But when it grows in, it's fabulous. But boy, did it grow. I think I had not mowed it for maybe 10 days before I went on vacation, maybe 8. And then between that and, going into July and then finally getting to it on that weekend after the end of my vacation, it was just in the, what was it, 22nd, 23rd, somewhere around there. Oh, God, was it thick. And then the time when I mowed it before, I ran out of time in daylight, and I'd left a patch near the fence to just keep growing. So really that area was more like a month and a half between cuttings, between being mowed. And that was that was like a jungle. It really was. It took me quite a long time, and I could explain it in great detail here, but instead, I think I'll show you what it looked like. And I'll show you when I got to the really bad part that I had to attack with my lawnmower after getting through a very, very thick carpet out there to begin with. Let's look at the video. Okay, here's the deal. I've been mowing the lawn all day. This section over here is about 25 days of growth. And the reason for this are my knee issues, vacation, and just nobody to do it for me. So I'm going to try to get this part done tonight. I'll leave some of that other strip and attack it some other time. But I will try to get this done because it's supposed to rain tomorrow. Oh, and by the way, there's a party going on next door. And can I tell you something? I really hope that my continued mowing is annoying the shit out of them. I don't know how, but I got through it. As you can see how difficult it was to push through that area at the back there. It took me 8 hours with frequent rest breaks. I put 7,000 agonizing steps on my iPhone's pedometer. Yeah, you see, it's when you're reading a script, that's what happens. And it did require 22 emptyings of the clippings bag. And you know what? I'm going to have to tackle that lawn again this weekend because it's grown so fast because we've had some wet weather. In fact, I got through doing the front yard again before this episode. So there are ice bags on both knees and on my left ankle as well. And hopefully I will be able to walk tomorrow. We're supposed to get rain tonight, too. In fact, we might get a big thunderstorm while I'm doing this. So that's what I did on my summer vacation. I hope yours was better and happier. Hey, any day above ground is a great day as far as I'm concerned. Let's take a break, and we will be back after this word from one of our outstanding sponsors.
こいつはただのチューハイじゃないんだよ。
見上げる炭酸、弾けるレモン。一口で二度うまいウィルキンソンドライセブン。日課ウイスキー使用ハイボール新発売。
Hello again. Welcome back to episode 51 of The Owner's Box. After Dark. And indeed, it is After Dark here at Fulton Pond Studios in Mansfield, Massachusetts. I'm Mark Farinella. You knew that. As you are probably aware, and I don't know how you couldn't be if you watch TV or whatever, at least in our area, if you're from outside of New England, well, you've probably got your own teams to worry about, but the New England Patriots opened their training camp this week at Gillette Stadium. And for the first time since 1976, I am officially not a member of the media corps covering the team. Now, I know I retired in 2018, or was retired, if you look at how those things go in the newspaper industry these days. But I maintained a link with the Patriots for a while because I regained my position as a part-time stringer for the Associated Press. That was a job that I did from, I think, 1985 to maybe 2002 or 2003, somewhere around there. Even between the time that I left the paper in Attleboro, went to work for the Quincy Patriot Ledger briefly, and then went back to Attleboro, I still had the AP job throughout all that time. That's why I was able to retire as the longest tenured beat writer covering the team, because it was a long stretch from when I started covering them in 1977 until I decided to give up the AP work, actually, officially this year. Now, I didn't get to do much work in 2018. I did practically all training camp in 2019. And then I was thinking that I was going to do more in 2020, but by that time, the pandemic, which I think now we're close to 70 weeks or more on that, and I'm going to still say that we're in it because of the stories we're hearing. I was thinking that I wasn't going to get a chance to cover them last year anyway because of all the restrictions they were putting on reporters and the number of people that could represent news organizations, and I was right. I didn't get a chance to at all last year, and to be honest, I learned that I didn't miss it. And also with the knee issues, it would be very difficult for me to get around Gillette Stadium, to get from the media workroom to the practice fields, and they don't make accommodations for people who are just hobbled. I would have to be in a wheelchair, and I'd have to be threatening them with lawsuits, I think, to be able to get any kind of special access or help to get around there. That's just the way they are. They don't trust anybody or anything. So if I were to be hobbling around or using a cane or whatever, it would take me forever. I'd have to climb up the entire first level of stands in the inside the bowl of the stadium. And believe me, even at my best prior to that. That's a challenge in 80-degree heat, 80, 90-degree heat or whatever. I couldn't do it. So I had contacted Jimmy Golan of the Associated Press last year, actually late last year, and I said, Jimmy, I just don't think anymore. I still get the emails though from the Patriots, and I've probably been too lazy to tell them I don't need them anymore because I'm not going to be showing up there for that reason. I think that I'll still be participating on the Patriots Hall of Fame nomination committee, but we didn't have a meeting this year because they didn't pick a new player member. Robert Kraft decided, in his infinite wisdom, to name the late cheerleading coach Tracy Stormonti to the Hall of Fame as a contributor, and a nice honor for her family. Too bad it, couldn't have happened when she was alive to appreciate it. And actually, she's the first woman to go into the Patriots Hall of Fame, and there's one other that I really think should get in, and she's still working, and she's been working there since I started on the beat. Her name's Nancy Meyer. She is the executive assistant to the football operations, and she handles everything. If you are a new player coming in to the Patriots, whether you were drafted or a free agent or traded, whatever, the first person you end up talking to once you've signed your contract is Nancy, because she sets up everything for you. She'll find the real estate agent to get you a house or an apartment or something. She'll get you completely settled as to what the procedures are around there. And she is one of the nicest people on the face of the earth, and she still has such incredible energy, and she probably knows where all the skeletons are buried in that place, and she'll never tell anybody where they are because she's loyal, and I can't blame her. She's worked for every ownership, from Billy Sullivan through Victor Kiam, through the brief James Bush Orthwine ownership, and then, of course, through Robert Kraft's. And she's terrific, and I hope they will put her in the Patriots Hall of Fame. But that's a decision that Kraft makes, not us in the committee, and they kind of minimized us this year, so I don't know what the future holds for that either. But as a result, I still, like I said, I still get the emails, and part of them, especially in the last week or so, involved the credentialing for this year's training camp. Now, I guess I thought that things would go back to normal once the state lifted all of the restrictions on sports teams. The Red Sox are playing before full houses again. The Patriots are going to have 68,000 in there, we think, unless something else happens shortly. But the NFL has decided to maintain a very, very strict set of restrictions on credentialing reporters. And, it's to me, it bothers me that they're doing this, because currently the way they've set it up is that access to players, live access to players, not Zoom calls, not stuff like that. If you're at training camp and you're outside there and you want to go to one of those setup report in those areas, it's not like the old days where we could just go up to a player and talk to them. They have to get them behind podiums with a backdrop that has the sponsor of the week on it, and you have to stand way back and you fire out questions. Well, now they're limiting the number of people that can do that, even though there are far more reporters, TV anchors, radio reporters, national reporters, cameramen, far more than they are allowing to do the in-person stuff. And let me explain some of it to you, okay? Currently access to players is limited to only the so-called major newspapers from New England, and that's left a lot of veteran reporters who are still there, looking in from the outside when it comes down to doing their interviews. The NFL has ordered that reporters be put into two categories: those that can be allowed full access as long as they're socially distanced, and those who will be allowed limited access or no access to the live stuff at all. And maybe the only thing they're going to get is what they set up in still setting up Zoom sessions that you have to log into on your computer and hopefully have a working microphone, all that, and be able to work all that. And it's up to the individual media relations directors of the teams to determine who's worthy of access and who isn't. And, I'll tell you the truth, I suspect that in maybe all but about 10 or 12 of the NFL's host cities, that's not as difficult a task as it sounds, because there are a lot fewer media outlets covering the teams in a lot of the cities. You look at New Orleans, they might have like one newspaper now, maybe two, and a couple of online guys and the AP, and that's about it. And, of course, a couple of really local TV stations. So Jacksonville has a small media contingent. Kansas City would be contained pretty much to a certain area. Arizona, I think, also as well. I mean, there are a lot of outlets in the Phoenix area, but I don't think, again, it's as overwhelming as it would be in places like Boston, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Houston, of course, now is the fifth largest market, the fourth or fifth in the country. So here in New England, there's always been a very large contingent of not just the big papers from all over the region, but also the small papers, like the paper I used to work for, or like the Brockton Enterprise, or the Cape Cod Times, the New Bedford Standard Times, the Lowell Sun, the Lynn Item, the Lawrence Eagle Tribune. I could go on. Worcester Telegram and Gazette, the Springfield papers. You go out farther, there's other smaller papers. And then there's the ones outside, like the Providence Journal, the Pawtucket Times. You go up to Nashua, to Concord, Manchester. Those papers would send people to. It was a mess. I mean, there were a lot of us. There really were. And there were certain numbers of people that would only show up maybe once or twice a week, as opposed to me, where I practically lived in that stadium for years. But it's one of the largest, or was one of the largest media contingents in the entire NFL. Now, that's changed. And part of it is because of the state of the newspaper industry in general. A lot of the papers either have really pulled in their reins a little bit, or a lot of them have been bought up by the same outfit. Most of the papers now, some of the ones I mentioned, Providence, Worcester, the Cape Cod, New Bedford, a lot of other papers have been bought up by what is now called the Gannett chain. It used to be called Gatehouse Brockton. And now they use one reporter, usually the guy from the Journal, to write for the entire group of papers that are under the same ownership. So as a result, only the Taunton Daily Gazette somehow finds a way to send their sports editor. So here's the rub on all that. You have these two tiers. You have what they call the tier 2M, and that is the full access group. Now, they have set that number at 25. Now, that includes television stations, a couple of radio outlets, a couple of .coms, and the cameramen that have to work for those TV stations, as well as their anchors or reporters. And so you cut down to the number of newspapers, and it just becomes the two Boston papers, the Globe and the Herald, the Associated Press, and the Providence Journal, and I think the Springfield newspapers, or their .com anyway, Mass Live. And that's it for traditional media being allowed into that all-access group. So what you've done at that point, the smaller papers, like the Sun Chronicle, the Brockton Enterprise, Lawrence Eagle Tribune, the Nashua Telegraph, Concord Monitor, and I'm not even talking about some of the other papers I mentioned, because like I said, they don't send anybody anymore. They are all relegated to what they call Tier 3OA. That's the lower access group. That means you show up at practice, you can watch it in the tent from a mile away, and then it's like you don't exist. You can't go down and interview the players afterwards. You can go to the press box, and I think they are going to set up some interview sessions, but you can't do anything unique in those circumstances. And I'll be honest, I don't think that can be setting very well with a couple of people who are among the few remaining veteran beat writers. Bill Burt of the Lawrence Eagle Tribune, Tom King of the Nashua Telegraph. Their access has been limited to the point of being worthless. But, and I will also say too that I when I saw the list, and I'm not going to make judgments here from my position because I'm no longer involved in it, but I will say that the team vice president in charge of communications, Stacey James, who's been there forever, he has legitimized at least one failing .com service in the 2M tier and several blog sites of, I think it would be fair to say questionable ethics and accountability in terms of journalism, and they are in that 3 OA grouping, and they're taking spots away from people who I think probably should be in there. That's not even taking into account either the bulk of the national media that can take interest in this team. And believe me, they do. Papers from all over the country, the big papers, the outlets, the sports outlets like ESPN, etc. The NFL Network gets its access, and they probably should, although I know that Bill Belichick doesn't treat them that well either. But, it's natural. You've got a team here that has won 6 Super Bowl championships in its recent past, and you have a current storyline that involves this team's first full-blown quarterback controversy since 2001 because Tom Brady's not here anymore. So it's definitely newsworthy, but it's tough to be a reporter covering the Patriots. Now, I understand that's probably the case in New York, in Chicago, Los Angeles, and maybe they're not the same demand to be covering the Bears or maybe the Chargers. The Rams, they're still considered a contender. Chargers, maybe, some of the cities where they have large media contingents probably aren't still don't have that same issue as trying to determine who's worthy and who isn't. Now, I'm sure if he cared enough about my opinion to respond to it, and again, I admit I'm not on the beat anymore, and I did represent probably the smallest newspaper when I was on it, but Stacey James would probably say I'm not taking into account the difficulty of his decision-making process or the pressures he's under because of the NFL chose to maintain these strict media policies despite the general lifting of COVID restrictions. It's not a New England Patriots decision. It's not a Bill Belichick decision. I got to believe Bill can't be too unhappy about limiting media access to him. I can't believe he's unhappy about that at all, in fact. But you know what? I agree. I'm probably wrong to point a finger at him, and so I won't do it too much. Except that I just... look, I've been a critic of the team's media policies for a long time. And it all started with Bill Parcells because he came in and he changed everything. I mean, we had the run of the place before Bill. And that's all I knew for the first, 15 years of my time on the beat was being able to walk into the stadium, sit down in Patrick Sullivan's office and ask him the latest question about that you would ask a general manager who was your same age. And, it wasn't as restrictive. You could go and play at training camp, would go between the two fields, and you would never get such an education about football, but just sitting there and watching and listening and being part of that. It was, wow, you get not only did you get the sight of it, but you got the sounds and the smell and the impacts. So you could feel, when those guys would go through their gauntlets and then boom like that, and you're like, whoa, you realize how really impressive, that sport could be. And of course, those are the days of 2-a-days and full pads all the times. And it's not the same anymore anyway, but I learned so much on those early days. And then when Parcells came and just kind of pushed the media out of that whole area, I was kind of like, come on, guy. So I wrote him a letter and he called me. He goes, hey, what are you talking about? I'm here to run the team the way I see fit. And of course, I'm like, I've got one of the most fired up coaches in the entire NFL yelling at me over the phone. And I like, well, Bill, I got to say, I'm not like, it's not like I came on this beat yesterday and I'm practically crapping myself when I'm talking to him, but I held my ground and I said, here's the deal. By throwing the photographers out of there, now I can't give you guys the kind of coverage that you used to get. By getting us so far back, I understand there are going to be restrictions. I get it. But if you could have just talked to some of us a little bit first about this, and I want to be able to present the best possible publicity because this team needs it. Remember, the Patriots at that time were like that close to being shipped to St. Louis. And you know what? After about a 25-minute conversations where I'm sweating bullets, listening to Bill Parcells, he actually said, well, you know what? Maybe I can make a few alterations. And he did. Not too many, but he did create some wiggle room in some of the things that some of the restrictive parts about it. And I got to admit, I think I won his respect. And to this day, I love talking to Bill Parcells. I haven't talked to him in a while, but if I had the opportunity to run into him and be able to sit and talk to him, first of all, he would remember who I am. And second of all, I think we'd have a nice little conversation. And again, that's why probably I'm such a big proponent of wanting Bill in the Patriots Hall of Fame, which I can't seem to convince. Well, I can convince my fellow reporters when we're at our meetings, and I'm not alone in feeling that way. But you folks who didn't like the way he left the team, going to the Jets afterwards, well, you know what? Get over it. If it weren't for him, everything that's happening now would not have happened. This team would be in St. Louis, and you would never have seen them again. And I don't know if they would have ever put a team in Boston because there would have been no push to build a new stadium or to get to this market. The only thing that would have worked in the Patriots' favor would have been it is such a large television market, but they were so close. And if it weren't for the really restrictive lease to the old stadium that they had to play under, and the fact that Parcells came in, straightened out the organization, got them to a Super Bowl very quickly, even with a new owner that came in and started to meddle in everything. And again, Robert Kraft has been a great owner for the New England Patriots. He didn't start that way. Nobody does. You go about your business and you learn, and then you finally find out, and as he did after running Parcells out of town, then having to deal with Pete Carroll for as long as he was here, finally realized, let the smart guy in the football operation run the football operation. And that's what Bill Belichick has been able to do since the year 2000. I feel like I need Conan O'Brien and Andy Richter to sing that song there. So anyway, I just still feel that I don't know if it's fair for what they've done. Now, Stacey's generally been a fair man. Don't get me wrong there. I think he knows I've been a critic of things, and he knows that I know that he knows that I know that often many of the things I was being angry about were new things I knew couldn't be changed because those were Belichick's orders. But I just wanted one member of the media at least to speak up and say, hey, guys, this isn't right. You're really treating us like dirt now. I think Stacey's tried to be fair. It's not easy when you're working for Bill Belichick. But I do bristle sometimes at what I would call special access that's given to the broadcast partner or the TV station that is a CBS affiliate and basically has more rights than the rest of us because they cover the AFC for the most part and the Patriots, and that's their biggest market other than New York, but New York is a split market. And there are also a few maybe favored and non-threatening individuals in the media corps that get a break or two that the rest of us didn't get. I don't begrudge them, but it's that I don't think was fair, but nothing I can do about it. And I get the feeling as years passed, and maybe as I and some of my fellow reporters got older, this whole group that came up through Parcells and then were hanging on by our fingernails, that gradually the team was kind of shuffling the smaller media outlets into our own little corner. and we really weren't welcome to escape from that. So, but other factors involved too. There's been a huge reduction in the number of media outlets covering the team in recent years, and there's also been a huge turnover of the reporting corps itself. You've lost a lot of the older, experienced reporters. I'm one of them. To the younger ones, who might be a little bit easier to boss around because they're not as crusty and jaded as we were. I just get the feeling that the philosophy now is bigger is better. And that means basically Boston. And maybe the Gannett chain, since they basically filter everything through one newspaper. And the TV stations. And to see the .coms coming in is kind of bothering me a little bit. But like I said, I'm out of it now. Maybe I shouldn't get the emails anymore. So I can hear you saying it. Why should you care? Now, I know some fans bristle at the notion that, oh, well, it's always been said, and guys, I'm not the only one who does. I mean, Dan Shaughnessy says this all the time in the Globe. He says that trained professional reporters remain the most reliable conduit between the team and the fans. We're the ones that are going to give you the real news. And I know a lot of you just like to that because, first of all, a lot of you don't want to hear bad news. And we are supposed to tell you the good and the bad. Of course, if all you want to hear is that everything is beautiful and that never is heard a discouraging word out of Gillette Stadium, well, I can suggest a few television stations or websites that will gladly give you everything you want. But if you want truth in reporting and the commentary that comes with it, I still think you're going to find it first from the traditional media outlets. And not all the time will you get it from just the largest newspapers on the beat. I think there's still room for some of the guys who are working for the smaller papers to give you outstanding reporting. And I'm kind of rooting for them to get a chance to do it. We'll be back after one more commercial break. See you then.
ファンタもう卒業したつもりだったけど。
いやでもこれプレミアだからさ。
どうしたのこのグラス。
これは小道具さ借りてきたから。
乾杯。うまい。
うまいよな。
濃いね。
濃いだろ。このピューレもよく見えるし。
ピュレーね。
ピュレ
ピュレーだよ。
このピューレだろ。取れたてだから。君のために取れたてにしといたから。
ありがとう。本格ピューレが美味しさの証。ファンタプレミアデビュー。
Welcome back to the Owner's Box after dark. Episode 51, coming down the home stretch for you. It's good to be back in the studio. I really kind of missed it, but every now and then I think we have to change a few things up, and let's try one of them. That sound you just heard, alarming as it may have sounded, is the indication now that you have to listen to what I'm about to say. And that means everything you need to know about where you can get in touch with me and how you can subscribe to all these things. First of all, email. If you want to send me an email, let me know how I'm doing here. It is theownersbox2020 at gmail.com. Hasn't changed, and it won't change. Snail mail. If you want to send me a real letter, crayon, ink, doesn't matter. No blood, please. That is the Owner's Box, Post Office Box 272, Mansfield, Massachusetts, 02048. And I'd like you to visit my website, which is theownersbox2020.com, and you can find my Blogging Fearlessly blog. It's been around since a long time ago, but it's been better since I rekindled it last February, I think it was, back in 2020. And all sorts of good stuff on it. I'm adding restaurant reviews again. I got new posts. I've got a little thing up the top that tells you if you click on it and you see new content alert, look for the date, and you'll see if I've actually put something new on it that day, and you don't have to go through and say, I didn't put anything new on it. So that's something important. Subscribe. The Owner's Box After Dark is available on YouTube, and I would like you to go to my channel. I think just do a search for The Owner's Box After Dark. You'll find my channel, and you'll find all of them from number 1 all the way through number 51, and you will be able to comment. You can like them. You can subscribe. Subscribing is great. It doesn't cost you a penny. You don't have to pay a cent. You just click on it. You'll get them. You'll be able to get notifications when there's a new one up, and I think you can enjoy that. And of course, don't forget my original gangsta of podcasts, the audio only, The Owner's Box. I'm still extremely proud of that one. That's more interview driven, and I've done 40 of those. And now, again, here's the situation. You can subscribe to those, and you can get them downloaded immediately to your cell phone. I mean, you don't have to do a thing. You could just make sure you subscribe, and then the good folks at Apple or Samsung or whoever you get your phone from, they're going to have their little software in there that will immediately accept a notification that you've got that in your podcast area, and you can click on that and listen to my podcast. And you can get those from Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Amazon Podcasts. That's relatively new. I'm happy about that. Spotify, iHeartRadio.com, and Odyssey, which used to be radio.com. That's good. That's a new one, and I think you'll enjoy that. Or you can just look for the links that I put up on my website, and they'll always take you to the podcasting page if you want to, or there'll be places where you can click to listen to them if you don't want to go through the whole subscription thing. Again, subscribing is free, doesn't cost you a thing. Please do it. Let's finish off tonight with just a quick reminder that we're not out of the woods yet on this pandemic, and I really hope we will be again talking about being back to normal, but I'm a little afraid, and I don't think I'm being unreasonable by admitting that or being afraid, because, well, when you have the Centers for Disease Control now, again, advising usage of masks if you're not vaccinated, or if you are vaccinated and you're still going into a public thing. I'm not actually even sure exactly what they're saying right now, but common sense would tell you that if you have a reason to fear someplace you're going, take a step to protect yourself. So I've still got a ton of masks. I've got more on order. I intend to wear them when I'm in a big crowd. I hope I don't have to go through the broadcasting through the mask again this year, because that's a little tough. It's it's a little muffled, but I think I learned fairly well and I got through it. But I think it's just smart. And again, as always, do not even hesitate to use your hand sanitizer. Wash your hands frequently. Do all those kind of things. And keep an eye out, too, on what they're saying about booster shots. Now, they haven't gotten to that point yet. Now, again, I got the Johnson & Johnson, so there's no waxy buildup on me. I got baby soft skin because of the powder. No, the one shot, it worked. I never had any side effects. Now, I'm a little afraid because they've said they've changed their mind about whether it's more effective against the variants. Now they think it's not as effective against the variants. So I'll do whatever they tell me to do, because I'm not stupid. And if it tells me, if getting another shot in my arm, and God knows I have had enough shots for everything that I do. I mean, I shoot myself full of insulin every night. So I will just do whatever they tell me to do, because I still want to hang around here for another 20 years or so. Maybe more. Maybe I'll live forever. Maybe not. I think I just jinxed myself anyway. Just take care of yourself, take care of your family. And that's the main thing, too, because now this new variant is starting to attack kids. And I would really hope that you'll take steps to avoid that. Now, I know I'm talking to a Massachusetts, basically, audience here. And we're smarter than most. We get vaccinated. We don't complain about it. We're not Alabama. We're not, sorry to a couple of people I know in Alabama. we're not some of the states where there's so much resistance because it's a political issue to them. I hope that we'll be more assured about the effectiveness about these vaccines, but in the meantime, I'll take them. I don't see any downside to it. I've already gotten my one shot that I'm supposed to have. If they tell me I should have more, I'll have more. I want to stick around, and I want everybody around me to be healthy too. So that pretty much wraps it up for tonight. I always have to end with, I can't wait till I can close out an episode without having to talk about COVID-19 or the Delta variant or whatever variant, the Catherine Zeta-Jones variant that may be coming down the pike later. Greek letters. It's all Greek to me. I just hope the time will come where I don't have to end one of these things with something about COVID. Take care of yourselves, folks. Please be good, to yourself, to your neighbors, to your friends, to your kids. See you again soon. Good night, everybody.